My son arrived in ER after a crash, and I discovered my husband and sister planned his death in a betrayal I can forget ever. Code blue, emergency room, traffic accident. 3 victims incoming. The moment the hospital announcement echoed through the halls, I started running. I'd been working night shifts in this emergency ward for 5 years. I'd faced hundreds of lives and witnessed death countless times, so I should have been able to stay calm in any situation. The stretchers pushed through the automatic doors, the paramedics' tense expressions, the blood-soaked clothing. I moved closer to quickly assess the patient's conditions. And then I froze. My husband Mark, my sister Diane, and my son Noah. His tiny 3-year-old body lay motionless on blood-stained white sheets. Noah. A scream caught in my throat, unable to escape. My feet moved on their own. I had to get to my son. I had to hold him right now. But someone grabbed my arm firmly. I turned to see Dr. Chen, my colleague, staring at me with a serious expression. "Don't look right now," he said quietly. When I asked him why in a trembling voice, he looked away. "The police will explain everything when they arrive," he said. Police? I couldn't understand what that word meant. This was an accident, wasn't it? Why the police? My son, my husband, my sister, they were dying right in front of me. It had been 3 hours earlier. I was getting ready for my night shift when I said goodbye to Noah. "Mommy, are you coming home today?" he asked, grabbing my uniform with his small hands. Mark smiled gently at him. "It's okay. Daddy's here," he said. It was just another peaceful evening, like always. As I was about to leave, my sister Diane suddenly showed up. "Hey sis, why don't I watch Noah tonight?" she suggested. "You're tired from all those night shifts." "You need to rest," she said with what seemed like concern, but I turned her down. "Mark's here, so we're fine. Thanks though." That's when it happened. A moment of silence, as Mark and Diane exchanged glances. An atmosphere like they wanted to say something, but I didn't think much of it. I was running late for work. Looking back now, maybe that was the final warning. When I got to the hospital and was changing in the locker room, my colleague Lisa came over. "Haven't you been tired lately?" she asked with a worried look. She was a single mother who worked on the same night shift team as me. "I'm fine. Having family helps me keep going," I answered with a smile. I really believed that with Mark and Noah, I could get through any difficult night shift. Around 9 p.m., I got a text message. It was from Mark, "Running late tonight, leaving Noah with your sister." I wondered why so suddenly. He'd just been home. But I was busy preparing for my shift and didn't have time to think deeply about it. "Diane's safe," I told myself. "She's my sister, and she adores Noah." 11 p.m. A call came into the emergency room. Traffic accident on the highway. 3 victims incoming. Adult male, adult female, young child. I started preparing with the other nurses. "Terrible accident," someone muttered. I agreed, never imagining for a moment that those 3 people were my own family. The moment the stretchers were brought in, the world stopped. Mark's blood-covered face, Diane's motionless body, and little Noah's pale lips. My feet moved on their own toward my son, but Dr. Chen stopped me. His strong arm gripped my shoulder, pulling me away from the treatment room. "This isn't just an accident, Rachel," he said in a low voice. "The police need to see this." I collapsed to my knees. I couldn't understand what was happening. Why my family? Why the police? And why did Dr. Chen have that look on his face? As if he knew something, as if he was certain this wasn't an accident. The treatment room door closed. Inside, my colleagues were trying to save my family, but all I could do was sit in the hallway, a nurse who'd saved hundreds of patients over 5 years, unable to do anything for her own family. Lisa rushed over and hugged me. "What happened? Mark and Diane and Noah?" she asked in a trembling voice, but I couldn't answer. "I don't know. I don't know what happened," was all I could say as I broke down crying. And then, in the distance, I heard sirens. The police were coming, the police Dr. Chen had mentioned. I still didn't know the truth that was about to be revealed, what my husband and sister had been doing behind my back for the past year, and what terrifying night my 3-year-old son had endured. Sitting on the cold hallway floor, I could only tremble. The time waiting outside the treatment room felt like an eternity. Lisa sat beside me, holding my shaking hands. "What happened? Mark and Diane and Noah?" she asked over and over, but I had no words to answer. "I don't know. I just don't know," was all I could repeat. I'm a nurse. For 5 years, I'd seen countless patients in this emergency room. I should have been able to stay calm and act precisely in any situation. But now, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I was supposed to be a professional, but I couldn't do anything. As a mother, as a wife, all I could do was fall apart. I felt pathetic. Lisa pulled me close. "Right now, you're a mother, not a nurse," she said gently. At those words, my tears overflowed even more. Yes, I was Noah's mother now. That small body was hovering between life and death inside the treatment room. 30 minutes later, the police arrived, a young officer in uniform and a female detective in a gray suit. The woman walked straight toward me and introduced herself. "I'm Detective Martinez. I have some questions for you. My son, my husband." I stood up and pleaded. But the detective's expression didn't change. "First, there are some things I need to confirm," she continued. Her calm tone only heightened my anxiety. The detective led me to a separate room, a small interview room. Lisa came with me. The detective began explaining the accident situation on the highway. They crashed into the median barrier. Your husband Mark and your sister Diane died instantly. Instantly. That word echoed inside me over and over. Mark, Diane, gone. I would never hear their voices or see their faces again, but the detective's next words made me look up. "Your son Noah is in critical condition but alive. He's currently in surgery. Alive." Noah was alive. That fact alone sustained me. The detective continued. "Where were they headed?" she asked. I shook my head. "I don't know. My husband only said he was leaving him with my sister." I showed her the message from Mark. The detective frowned. They were heading to the coast, to a place with cliffs. Cliffs? Why? At 11 p.m., with a 3-year-old child, why to the ocean cliffs? I couldn't understand. What would be the point? Not a picnic, not sightseeing. What business would they have at cliffs in the middle of the night? The detective pulled out a tablet and showed me the screen. "This is the preliminary investigation report." The child lock in the back seat had been manually fixed so it couldn't be opened from inside. Abnormal substances were detected in your son's drink bottle. When we checked the car's GPS history, the destination was set to ocean cliffs. That doesn't make any sense. I raised my voice. "Why the child lock? Why something in his drink? Why the cliffs?" The detective answered quietly. "We're investigating that now. But there's something more important." The police had seized Mark and Diane's smartphones. "We need to check the message history," the detective said. "What are you looking for?" I demanded. But the detective said, "I can't say yet, but one thing I can tell you. Your son may have saved his own life." I couldn't understand what that meant. How could a 3-year-old child save his own life? But the detective's serious expression told me this wasn't just a traffic accident. At that moment, the treatment room door opened. Dr. Chen came out. His surgical gown was stained with blood. I stood up and rushed over. "The surgery was successful," he said. "Noah is unconscious, but his condition is stable. Head trauma, multiple fractures, dehydration. But he's alive." I nearly collapsed to my knees. Lisa supported me. "He's alive. Noah's alive." I repeated over and over in my mind, but Dr. Chen's next words made me freeze again. "The blood test detected trace amounts of sleeping medication." "Sleeping medication?" "Noah's only 3 years old." I screamed. "Someone gave it to him." "Probably mixed in his drink," Dr. Chen answered. Detective Martinez stepped forward. "Would that be evidence of attempted murder?" she asked. Dr. Chen nodded. Then the doctor looked me straight in the eye and said, "Rachel, I stopped you earlier because I've seen cases like this before: domestic violence, child abuse, and sometimes worse things. Your son had bruises on his wrists, the kind left when someone grabs you hard." I felt my world crumbling. Mark, Diane, sleeping medication, child lock, ocean cliffs. Everything was converging toward one terrifying possibility. No, that couldn't be. Mark loved Noah. Diane was my sister, Noah's aunt, and she'd always been kind to him. They couldn't have done something to Noah. But the evidence told a different story, something cold and calculated. The detective said it'll take a little more time for the smartphone analysis results. But Rachel, prepare yourself. Prepare for what? I asked. The detective took a deep breath. The truth may be much more cruel than you can imagine. I went to the ICU. I wanted to see my son. The moment I saw Noah lying in the small bed, tears overflowed. Bandages on his head, a cast on his arm, his small body connected to a ventilator. Noah, Mommy's here, I said, taking my son's hand with trembling fingers. What happened? Who did this to you? And then I saw the bruises on my son's wrist. On that small wrist, the marks of adult fingers remained clearly. Someone had grabbed this little hand hard, roughly, hard enough to cause pain. What if it was someone I knew, someone I trusted? From the hallway, I heard Detective Martinez's voice. We have the analysis results, she told another officer. Check the message history right away. In the silence of the ICU, I kept holding my son's small hand. The regular sound of the ventilator, the electronic beeping of the heart monitor. Noah's face was pale, looking as fragile as porcelain. The bandages on his head, the cast on his arm, the tubes connected all over his body. How much pain had this tiny body endured? Noah, Mommy's here, I whispered. What happened? Who did this to you? But no answer came back. Only the quiet sound of the ventilator echoed. I stared at my son's wrist. The bruises clearly visible there, the marks of adult fingers. Someone had grabbed this small hand hard. Someone had forcibly held down a child trying to escape in terror. My body trembled. What if it was someone I knew? There was a knock, and Detective Martinez entered the ICU. Rachel, we need to talk about what we found on the smartphones, she said quietly. The detective pulled up a chair and sat beside me. Then she took out her tablet. What I'm about to show you is painful, but you have a right to know, she prefaced. First, she displayed the message history from my sister Diane's smartphone. The other party was Mark, my husband. Scrolling through the screen, there were a year's worth of messages. At first the content was casual, but gradually it changed. Intimate words, affectionate emojis, and then explicit content. My husband and my sister, for a whole year, behind my back. My hands trembled. But the detective said there were more important messages and advanced the screen. A message from 3 weeks ago. Diane to Mark, the kids saw. What do we do? Mark's reply. We have to deal with it. Can't tell Rachel. Diane's reply. What if he talks? Mark's reply. We'll make sure he can't talk. I gasped. Make sure he can't talk. What did that mean? Surely not. The detective showed me the next screen. Mark's smartphone search history. 3-year-old testimony reliability. Cliff fall accident investigation period. Wife's life insurance beneficiary change without spouse knowing. Each search term pierced my heart. This had been planned, not an accident, something carefully prepared. And the last message sent 30 minutes before the accident. Mark to Diane, execute tonight. No turning back. Execute. Execute what? What were they trying to do to my son? The detective took a deep breath. Rachel, I'm going to tell you the truth, she said. Your son witnessed the two of them together, and he said he was going to tell you. Noah. 3-year-old Noah had seen Daddy and Auntie's secret, and he tried to tell Mommy. They panicked. They thought about how to silence your son, and they decided, the detective continued, to take him to the cliffs and make it look like an accident. No, that can't be, I screamed. Mark loved Noah. Diane is my sister. But the detective's expression didn't change. Evidence doesn't lie. And there's more. The detective showed me a new screen. Bank transaction records. $38,000 had been moved from my savings account to Mark's hidden account, an account I didn't know about. Furthermore, documents for selling the real estate I'd inherited from my grandmother. My signature was on them, but I had no memory of signing such documents. They were forged. Using my name, they tried to steal my assets. And finally, the detective showed me one more document. A medical certificate Mark had been creating. A forged certificate. The content stated that the wife's mental state was unstable and hospitalization was necessary. They were trying to commit you to a psychiatric hospital, the detective explained. Steal your assets, take custody of your son, and isolate you from society. It was the perfect plan. I couldn't say anything. I didn't want to believe it. But the evidence thrust the cold truth at me. Mark and Diane hadn't loved me. I was just an obstacle to them. And Noah was a nuisance who discovered their secret. That's when it happened. A beeping sound rang out. The heart monitor was showing a change. Noah's heart rate was increasing. The detective stood up and called for a nurse. I stared at my son's face. His eyelids moved slightly. His fingers trembled faintly. "Noah?" I called out. "Mommy's here. Can you hear me?" And then a miracle happened. Noah's eyes slowly opened. His unfocused eyes looked around the room, and then they found my face. His small lips moved. "Mommy." I hugged my son while crying. "Noah, Noah, you did so well," I repeated over and over. Nurses rushed over and checked Noah's condition. Vital signs were stable. His consciousness was becoming clearer. Dr. Chen also arrived and examined Noah. "Remarkable recovery," the doctor said, "but don't push him. His body is still weak." Noah looked at me, and in a small voice he said, "Mommy, Daddy and Aunt Diane told me not to tell Mommy." My son's voice was trembling. The memory of terror hadn't faded yet. I gently stroked his head. "It's okay now. You can tell me everything," Noah continued. "I tried to get back to Mommy. I wanted to protect Mommy, but the door wouldn't open. I couldn't get out." My heart constricted. A 3-year-old child had tried to protect me. Even though he was locked in with the child lock, he desperately tried to escape. He kept pounding on the door. Those small handprints remained on the car's back seat. "Noah, you were so brave," I said. "But protecting you is Mommy's job. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." My son shook his head slightly. "Mommy, I tried hard," he said proudly. At those words, I cried out loud. Detective Martinez spoke gently to Noah. "You're a brave boy. Thanks to you, we know the truth." Noah looked at me with sleepy eyes. "Mommy, Daddy, and Auntie aren't coming anymore?" he asked. I hugged my son. "They're not coming anymore. Never again. They'll never hurt you again, I promised." Noah closed his eyes, looking relieved. His exhausted little body fell asleep again. But this time, it was a safe sleep, a sleep without fear. The detective said quietly, "Now we have all the evidence. The full scope of what they were planning will be revealed." I gazed at my son's sleeping face. How much terror this small life had endured. How much courage he'd mustered. Mark and Diane were no longer in this world, but their crimes would be recorded forever. And I vowed in my heart to protect this small son for the rest of my life. After Noah fell back asleep, Detective Martinez led me into the hallway. Her expression was stern. "The investigation isn't over yet. The truth that emerges may be even more shocking," she warned. The next morning, the detective contacted me. The detailed forensic results from the car were in. The child's seat showed traces of Noah's resistance, scratch marks from small fingers. On the back seat door, handprints from desperately trying to open it. The drink bottle showed evidence of sleeping medication being mixed in. Everything told the story of a planned crime. Furthermore, the police searched Diane's home. What they found there completely shattered my heart. Photos of ocean cliffs, many of them evidence of reconnaissance, photographed from various angles. In a notebook was written, "Execute December 8th. Last night's date." And large quantities of paper practicing my signature. Evidence of trying to imitate my handwriting, writing my name over and over again. The detective showed me more evidence on her tablet, files found on Mark's work computer, life, insurance beneficiary change documents. Fortunately, they hadn't been submitted yet. If they had been, all the insurance money would have gone to Mark after my death. And a forged diary. False records Mark had written about his wife being mentally unstable. He probably intended to use it in divorce court. The dates started several months ago. Wife committed violence against the child. Wife screamed in the middle of the night. Wife engaged in self-harm. All lies. But if this had been submitted to court, I might have lost custody. When I returned to the hospital, Lisa rushed over. "Rachel, I'm sorry. I should have noticed sooner," she said with a tearful face. "What do you mean?" I asked. Lisa explained in a trembling voice. Mark had come to the hospital last month. He had asked about my schedule, when I worked night shifts, when I wasn't home. Lisa had thought at the time it was just concern, but looking back now, it was part of the plan. Dr. Chen also came to me. "Rachel, I missed it too. He said 3 weeks ago he'd seen bruises on Noah's arm. When he asked Mark about it, he'd explained that Noah fell at the park. But the way those bruises formed wasn't from a fall, they were from being grabbed. But while I had doubts, I didn't pursue it deeply." Other nurses also testified. Someone had seen Mark trying to break into the locker room. He might have been looking for my personal information, passwords, banking information, all the dots connected to one terrifying plan. A few days later, the police financial investigation results came in. Diane's bank account had $85,000 in suspicious deposits over the past 6 months. The source was my grandmother's inheritance. Using forged documents, part of the land had already been sold. My assets had been stolen without my knowledge. Mark's hidden account was also investigated. It contained not only my $38,000 in savings, but also $50,000 in life insurance advance payments. Mark had removed me as beneficiary and was receiving it himself. Furthermore, the joint account with Diane had $123,000. Altogether, they'd stolen over $211,000 from me. And then there was the most shocking discovery, a document saved in Mark's cloud storage. The title was Post-Divorce Plan. Phase 1. Make wife appear unstable. Document everything. Phase 2. Obtain full custody of Noah. Phase 3. If Noah becomes a problem, make it look like an accident. Phase 4. Inherit everything. Marry Diane, leave the country. I could only stare at the screen. This was what my husband had been thinking, what my sister had been cooperating with. I was just a cash cow to them. Noah was an obstacle in the way. Detective Martinez said, "Both are already deceased, but this will be formally recorded as a criminal case, attempted premeditated murder, child abuse, fraud, document forgery. Their names will remain as criminals forever." Local news started reporting the incident, an affair between sister-in-law and husband, and an attempted child murder plot. Diane's real estate company lost credibility and was driven out of business. Mark's company also issued an official apology statement. The reputations of both were completely ruined, and the recovery of assets began. The embezzled $38,000 was recovered from Mark's estate. The sale of grandmother's land was nullified, and everything came back to me, and the life insurance money. Since Mark hadn't submitted the beneficiary change documents, $200,000 was officially paid to me. Ironically, the assets Mark and Diane had tried to steal from me all came back. Moreover, their deaths increased it further, a total of $318,000. But this amount gave me no joy. I just thought I'd use it for Noah's future. The time came to prepare for the funeral. The funeral home suggested a joint funeral for my husband and sister, but I declined. They don't deserve to be mourned as family. I requested certain words be engraved on their tombstones. Here lie two who chose betrayal over love. It might have been revenge, but it was also the truth. Mark and Diane betrayed their loved ones and tried to kill an innocent child. That fact deserved to be carved in stone forever. In the ICU, Noah woke up again. "Mommy, where's Daddy?" my son asked. I answered gently. "Daddy's gone now. But he'll never hurt you again." Noah thought for a moment and then said, "Mommy, I don't remember Daddy. Is that okay?" I hugged my son. "That's okay. What matters is that you're safe. That's all." 3 months passed. Noah recovered at an amazing rate. Through rehabilitation, he was able to walk again. In the early days, he suffered from nightmares. He'd cry out in the middle of the night, terrified that the door wouldn't open. But with support from a child psychologist and my love, the wounds gradually healed. One day, Noah asked me, "Mommy, I don't remember Daddy. Is that okay?" With his small face, he looked up at me anxiously. I knelt down to meet my son's eyes. "That's okay. What matters is that you're safe and happy now." "That's all," I answered. Noah thought for a moment, then asked again, "Mommy, I tried to protect Mommy. Did I do good?" At those words, tears overflowed from my eyes. I hugged my son tightly. "You did more than good. You saved both of us," I whispered. Noah smiled slightly in my arms. I changed jobs too, from night shifts to day shifts. The hospital made special accommodations, allowing me flexible hours. Prioritizing time with my son, that was my new way of life. I renovated my grandmother's country house from the inheritance, a quiet place with a large yard. Noah and I began our new life there. Lisa also moved nearby with her daughter. We became like a real family now, even without blood ties. I secured the recovered assets as an education fund for Noah. I learned that there are things more important than money, safety, and love. Those are the most valuable things. One day, Dr. Chen said to me, "Rachel, you're the strongest person I know. Your son is alive because you taught him courage." At those words, I bowed my head deeply. Lisa came to visit with the children every weekend. "We're family. Not by blood but by choice," she said. How much those words warmed my heart. A year later, Noah's 4th birthday arrived. I held a small party. Hospital colleagues, Detective Martinez, neighborhood friends. Everyone celebrated Noah's recovery. Noah pulled my hand in front of the cake. "Mommy, let's make a wish together," he said. Together, we blew out the candles. That night, as I put Noah to bed, I thought a year ago, I thought family meant blood ties, people connected from birth, or people connected by marriage. But Noah taught me, family is the people who stay by your side when the world tries to tear you apart. Family is someone who, even at 3 years old, tries to protect the people they love. Mark and Diane were my blood relatives, but they were never my family. Noah, Lisa, Dr. Chen, Detective Martinez. These people are my real family. And that's enough. Noah held my hand and said with sleepy eyes, "I love you, Mommy." I smiled and answered, "I love you too, my brave boy. Forever." Looking out the window, the cherry tree in the garden that my grandmother loved swayed in the spring breeze. A new season was beginning. Even carrying the scars of the past, we would walk forward, Noah and I together, and with the people who love us. That was the story of our new family.